Good afternoon, everyone. If I could have your attention, please. Do I clap? Get him, Jack.
All right, everybody, can you hear me? On the back, can you hear me? We're going to start the presentation. So if we can get your attention, please, we're going to get started. Thank you so much. With that, I'll hand it back over to State Bank.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Jack. Good afternoon, everyone. Is everybody doing well today? Come on, seriously? The mayor's here. We're supposed to be happy. Yeah. I am Angela Upchurch from State Bank. I have two of our Carmel area men. Andy Pinniger is our market president, and Brad Condon is here with us. State Bank is 113 years old. We are somewhat new to the Carmel area, Fishers. We do not have a location as of yet, but we are expanding north on the 69 corridor. We are super happy to be here today to welcome our new members. Some of you will notice there are people that have name badges that have a blue ribbon at the bottom. Those are our new members, so make sure before the end of the day you reach out and give them a warm One Zone welcome. I'm going to go ahead and call your name, so new members, if you'll stand when I call your name, and then we'll give you a round of applause at the end. First Farmers Bank and Trust, Future Velo Incorporated, iCode, guys, go ahead and stand up, guys. Mosquito Hero, New Life Behavioral Health, Rejoice Financial, and Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Are any of you here? I mean, way back there. Hey, Tim. Hey, guys. And now, my best friend, Jeff.
All right, doesn't she do great? Come on, give her a round of applause, Angela. And now it is time for you to give a huge round of applause for your luncheon showcase sponsor, IU Health. Come on, let me hear ya. Chad, come on over here, Chad. Let's get where everyone can see you. Chad Dilley from IU Health is going to tell you a little bit about what they do over there.
Hey, good afternoon. Hopefully everybody enjoyed lunch today. I'm Chad. I'm from IU Health Saxony Hospital, very soon to be IU Health Fishers Hospital. If you've driven by our campus, you notice there's a lot of activity going on there. And overall, IU Health is really privileged to be able to invest approximately $300 million into the community. And that is really driven by the growth. Obviously, everybody that spends any time in this community knows that it's a growing and thriving area, and we're just trying to keep up with that growth. So by the end of 2025, we will start to deliver babies at IU Health Fishers. We're really excited about.
How about a woot woot for that? Come on. Babies. That's awesome. That's how Mayor Fadness is growing your population. Okay.
That's right. Also, a lot of off-campus developments going on. So right here off of USA Parkway in the former Navient facility, we actually just opened up a large primary care office. So increasing some ambulatory access points, increasing the inpatient capacity, and then also adding a dedicated Riley Pediatric Emergency Medicine. So 24/7 Riley Emergency Medicine physicians in 2025 will be there. And we're really just honored to be a part of the team here in the community and have the opportunity to serve.
Awesome. Let's hear it for IU Health. Chad Dilley, thank you. And now to our leader.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome to the Fishers State of the City Luncheon, presented by IU Health. Today, we will hear from Mayor Scott Fadness and other individuals who play a key role in making Fishers the incredible place it is. Scott Fadness became Fishers' first mayor in January of 2015. Since then, he has brought to life a smart, vibrant, and entrepreneurial vision for the city. Under Mayor Fadness' leadership, Fishers has truly become transformational, a city where large corporate headquarters, small businesses, families, and people of all ages are proud to call home. His efforts revitalizing Fishers downtown have been especially important to attracting and retaining professional talent from across the country. Mayor Fadness' focus on making Fishers inviting to employers large and small has resulted in new economic development records being set each year since he took office. Under his administration, the city of Fishers has added 8,000 new jobs and an investment of nearly $2.6 billion in new capital. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Scott Fadness.
It's my security detail. Come on up, guys. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Always humbling to have such a wonderful crowd here today. And when I was in the hallway, I had a number of people ask me, what are you announcing today? What are the big projects? What's the next big agenda for you? And honestly, we've got so much on our plate right now that we're just worried about executing on the things that we already have going on. So, just over here, you see the arena being built, new home of the Indy Fuel. We've got downtown development underway. Andretti is breaking ground on their facility, thousands of jobs coming to the city of Fishers. We introduced our budget to the city council recently, third year in a row of tax decreases, historic investments in our neighborhoods. And so there's a lot of activity going on. And so I thought today I'd do something a little bit more unorthodox, frankly, partly in response to just the political environment we find ourselves in. Sometimes I think to myself, does compassion and competency coexist anymore in our public realm? And when I get frustrated with all the political rhetoric, I'm always inspired to go back to where public service truly lives and where competency and compassion can coexist. And you're going to hear those stories today from the men and women on the stage. And I think you're going to hear some individual stories that are really compelling. You're going to hear some themes and some technology and some efforts underway to take care of what is one of the most fundamental things that each one of us have sworn an oath to do, which is to keep each and every one of our Fishers residents safe. Now, I tend to start every one of my State of the Cities with a humbling moment. And so I'd like to share one with you to tell you about a collective public safety action that myself, Chief Gephardt, and Chief Arusa undertook not too long ago. So Chief Arusa and Chief Gephardt and I, we were visiting a religious institution in Fishers to build a better relationship with one another. And afterwards, we were in the chief's car, police chief's car. He was driving. Chief Arusa was in the passenger seat, and I was in the back. I just think it's fun to ride in the back of a police car. Get some rumors going, That'll get out on Twitter pretty quick, won't it? So we're on our way back to the office, and lo and behold, there are two giant St. Bernards loose at 126 in Brook School. No leash, no owner present. And we were like, well, this isn't good. So Ed calls back to the police department. They're like, yeah, we've had a number of calls on these two dogs. So we start what I believe is a pursuit down 126th Street. The dogs are running down 126th Street. We're chasing them in the car. No lights and sirens at that time. We didn't want to scare them. They duck into a neighborhood. And then these two guys, because, alpha males, they're like, I think the dogs are going to come out here. No, I think the dogs are going to come out here. Ultimately, we identify where the dogs are. So they're right at the entrance of a neighborhood. And we're waiting for animal control to get there. But they're a ways out. So Chief Arusa, in a heroic moment, says, I'm a dog lover. Let me jump out, and I'll entertain the dogs until the animal control people get there. Chief Gephardt and I don't argue this strategy. And so we pull up. Chief Arusa exits the car. He does what I call kind of like a Crocodile Dundee thing where he gets down on his knees to relate to the dogs. But those dogs were not in a mood to relate to Chief Arusa. So one of them kind of snaps at his face, and it escalates quickly. And so Arusa turns to find sanctuary back in the car. And the dog, I think they call it a $1 million wound, bites him directly in the backside as he tries to slowly crawl into the car so that he's not alarming the dogs any further. Gephardt over here, brother at arms, doesn't move a muscle. Sits there with his baseball cap on, and And Arusa gets in the car and he's like, where were you guys? And Ed's like, I don't do dogs, man. I catch bad guys. So we have this moment. It's probably in social media somewhere, because in today's world, everybody's got to talk about everything. There's probably a video of me in the back seat screaming at these dogs, Arusa getting bit in the hind end, and Ed chewing his gum and looking the other way. So that is the power of a team working on public safety. So. So let's get right to it. We talk all the time. Monica Heltz, our public health director, Chief Steve Arusa, our fire chief, Chief Gephardt, our police chief. We talk all the time. We are obsessed about how we keep our community safe. And I want to start with the police department a little bit, Chief. It was probably 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, maybe even a year, where you and I were having this discussion about, should we hire more police officers? Should we continue to flood the zone, so to speak, with police officers, or should we be looking at technology? And at this point, you had some guys in your department that were really driving the lab and the technology that we have. Can you talk about what technology means to policing today? And our goal here, folks, just so you know, is that we want to get behind the curtains and we want to tell you exactly what's going on. Because I think a lot of times public safety gets kind of wrapped up in this folklore, and there's a lot of heroicism that goes into it, but there's just core competencies and technologies and capabilities that you have to have. So, Chief, do you want to talk about how technology has started to really play a role in what we're doing in law enforcement?
Yeah, I think an extremely relatable example of what I think technology can do for all of us in the city to keep it safe, because we're always looking to make sure we keep that safer city rating, is to grow our police force and have good, aggressive police officers that are out there, but technology that also helps to take some of the pressures off that back end stuff and let the officers do what they do best, which is be proactive. A good example of this would be our internet crimes unit was working a case, and that is our catch a predator-esque. They're always out trying to protect our youth, and we house Carmel, Noblesville, Hamilton County, and Westfield all at the police station. So that unit sits in our house, and they got probable cause, and they got a tip, and they worked through probable cause, and they searched the device. Now, in this, we were only looking for pictures of child pornography at the time. And what they found in there was an actual video of much worse, but they didn't have an ID part of the video. They couldn't see anybody. But what they did do is amazing. They enhanced it. They grabbed a thumbprint. And you see a hand on the picture in front of you, and that's what that is indicated of. And from that fingerprint, they used technology to enlarge it and gain ridges. We sent that fingerprint in and came back with a viable suspect who we arrested and put in jail for many years for violating our youth.
And I think, Chief, I don't know that people can really understand how extraordinary that is, that we had a, for lack of a better term, a monster terrorizing little kids on video, and you had an officer that caught that person's fingerprint as they waved across the camera.
Yeah, so
and caught the person.
It's actually a video, and they still shot it. But so the internet crimes detective, which do a great job, and then what we have is some really good lab people, and one of the officers in particular is forensic investigator Matt Noyes, is really good with fingerprints. It's his thing. And from that, they enhanced the image, gained the ridges, and were able to submit it for a positive ID and match on someone that we never thought was doing the crimes we thought they were doing, and let alone being able to catch them. So that's an example of great technology coming in to meet great police work.
And if I'm not mistaken, there were a couple kids that were continuing to be violated when we arrested this individual.
Yeah, they don't pride themselves on arrests. They pride themselves on saves of youth. So our save rate is what we count, not arrest rate. And I think this year, and he's out here, Major Peterson's over that unit, 14 saves this year to date, Mike, 14 saves of our youth actively being violated. We're able to intervene and save them in particular, among others that could have been violated, because this is not something that you just can stop on a Monday, right? This is a sick thing that happens over years and years and years and years.
And Chief, I want to stay on this technology curve for a second. Not only do we have some incredible, grab your mic there. So, yeah, there you go. So we invested in fingerprint capabilities, but there's some other technologies as well that we've continued to invest in the lab that furthers our ability from an investigative perspective. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, is that better? Is everybody in the back's like, I don't know what he's saying up there. Also, in conjunction to that, we started Assistant Chief Gannon and Major Mike Peterson from a training brought back a program called Rapid DNA about 1.5 years ago, and we started to really consider this as we were really focused on illegal weapons being taken off our city streets. And our patrol officers have taken 396 illegal weapons off the city streets of Fishers, and 64% of those come back to violent crime. What we started to do on these cases is grab DNA. And the program, when we presented it to the mayor, he was already kind of intrigued by it and knew about it, was aware of it, so he was right in the passenger seat with us. But what we're able to do inside of our walls, we're the only other agency outside of state police that can run DNA in their own building. So I can take DNA, I can take it off material evidence, and I can run it, and in 90 minutes I can make a match if I know who the violator is. And this helps out in a number of ways. Case in point of a DNA case. There's unknown profiles in the state or unsolved cases in the state. And we have a forensic investigator, her name is Jenna Burrow, and she is our DNA specialist. And so they're up and they decide to run some material DNA, which is vacuumed off of a surface or a substance in a burglary or a property crime or a carjacking. And from that, they got a match to a profile of a burglary suspect that burglarized in Carmel and in Elkhart, so a serial burglar. We were able to match, identify a suspect, and bring closure to those cases. That's the power of DNA as it stands today.
I want to stay on this technology or change trend because it's not just the technology, it's the change leadership. And Chief Arusa, if you see on your programs today, there's a set of pictures that you'll find on the back side. And there's one that may not seem all that astounding to you, but there's a picture of 2 firefighters with bulletproof vests on. And Chief, you've been in the fire service for 40 years. And I joke sometimes, you were back when they had leather helmets, I think, right? I have. Yeah. But talk to me about not only why bulletproof vests, what does that say about where we are today as a society, but then talk about the change leadership that it took to have your guys wear them and why. Why are they wearing them?
Yeah, it's the risk profile of our community is changing. We had several near misses, nothing malicious with our firefighters and our paramedics, and we realized that the risk profile was increasing for their ballistic protection. So we went out and our city council made a commitment to keep our firefighters safe and purchased personal ballistic protection for each firefighter. And I think we're one of the only firefighters in the country that has done so. In addition to that, we partner with the police department on a high threat response program. Not many public safety agencies partner to this level. And what that means is that when there is an active assailant, the people who are hurt are inside the building, and when that's stabilized, the fire department can come in and save lives. What we've done is we've increased our ability to serve our community by having protective equipment and training our police and firemen together in task forces to be able to go into unsecured areas in the building and save lives and remove patients before the shooter is neutralized. And that's not happening in very many communities across the country. In fact, people call us and ask how we did it. A lot of donuts. I love you, man. You know I do.
But you know, I think there was a great moment, if you recall, Chief Gephardt, you and I went out to this joint training where police and fire were trying to, it was in Britton Falls, of all places, and we were watching what was supposed to be a simulated situation where someone was shooting while their house was on fire. And I watched a fireman walk up to a police officer who had his gun drawn and a shield out, and the fireman needed to get somewhere, but the policeman didn't know where he was trying to get to, and they had this interaction, and the police officer said, just grab me by the shoulder and direct me where you need me to go. And the fireman's like, I'm not grabbing you, you got a gun. And so it's like at that level, these police and firemen are bridging this kind of cultural divide between their different departments to try to bring about a better outcome in an intense situation. And all of you, and I myself as a civilian, would take that for granted, that those things are happening in modern day America. but they're not. This is stuff that isn't happening everywhere. And I think it's really telling about the leadership of these two that they're trying to accomplish that. And the other change leadership, Chief Arusa, that you advocate down at the State House about a lot is being a paramedic. I think, can you talk a little bit about the level of medical care that we provide here in our city in terms of emergent medical care and what that means to the average resident? You know, you tell me story after story about these incredible saves, and I don't think people know this, and what the difference between an EMT and a paramedic is.
Yeah, we're really blessed. In Fishers, we have probably the most robust EMS capability in the state. And I hope my firefighters are watching because they get all the credit. What we've got in Fishers is on every single piece of fire apparatus, we have a paramedic. So what does that mean? The difference between an EMT and a paramedic is an EMT is trained in basic life support technique. So that means splinting, doing CPR, direct pressure on bleeding. Where a paramedic is trained to do critical interventions to save a life, and that's advanced life support. And we're very blessed in this community to provide advanced life support on every piece of apparatus that responds to your home. Some great stories. When a person has a heart attack, that is an interruption in blood flow and oxygen to the heart, and that's usually caused from a blockage. The longer that blockage occurs, the more damage to the heart. So time is muscle. We have a great partnership with IU Health. They have 2 cath labs in Fishers, and the gold standard for bringing a patient with chest pain to the cath lab is when they reach the door of the hospital to the cath lab table, 1 hour. In Fishers, our times we measure from 911 call to cath lab. So we had, a couple months ago, we had a 24-minute 911 call to cath table to remove that blockage. We have 45 minutes, 55 minutes, and this occurs on a regular basis in Fishers. And it's important to understand that that time is from the time we get the 911 call to the cath lab, not the gold standard from when someone gets to the hospital and gets to the cath lab. So we're really blessed. We've had numerous saves. We had a gentleman, we had a motorcycle accident. We had a patient with a broken back, broken extremities, a punctured lung. Before we got to the scene, a police officer put a tourniquet on that patient. Bought us time to save that patient's life. We stabilized the patient with a spinal cord injury, decompressed the lungs so they could breathe, got them to the trauma center, and 1 week later they were discharged to a rehab hospital. So that's the type of things that your firefighter paramedics are doing on a daily basis. And thank you for asking.
Yeah. Well, and so our recent addition, Monica Heltz, which you guys all got to know her during the turbulent times of COVID, but what we're really excited about is the next chapter. We can try our best, and we always will, to perfect how we're going to deal with an emergency and how we're going to respond to an emergency, but we'd sure like to prevent them. And the framework that public health brings into the conversation for our city to think about how we swim upstream and we prevent bad things from happening has been really powerful. As Monica's come into our organization, it started to work with us all collectively on, okay, that's great, guys, you're doing a wonderful job on responding. What is the data telling us, and what are the things that we can do from a public policy perspective? What are the things that we can do from a resource perspective to ensure that we're helping people before we get to that? So Monica, do you want to talk a little bit about, as we exited COVID and you started to think about how public health can integrate into working with public safety to really ensure that we're not only responding, but we're preventing things from happening?
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. And before I get into that, I want to just address the issue with the 2 dogs, because we did actually do follow-up on that bite.
Yeah.
I didn't have the pleasure of witnessing said event, but
The pleasure of witnessing him, geez, a little tension.
But I had the pleasure of being involved in the follow-up of that event, because you may not know, but we do follow-up on all animal bites that occur in this jurisdiction. So we were also involved in that event. Yeah. Yeah. So some of the benefits of working with these guys, I mean, it's really opened up my world. I didn't have the opportunity to work so closely with public safety in my previous role at other health departments. So it's been really interesting, I think, to learn how we intersect and how we can benefit each other and how we can make each other stronger. An example of that would be the recent addition of a social worker to our team that works directly and collaboratively with our community paramedicine team on follow-up. which has led to a number of incidences where we're able to get people into care that, we're having repeated 911 calls on, where we're able to kind of address more root cause issues in their lives to get them to a more a place where they don't need to call emergency services often, whether that's getting into psychiatric care or whether it's getting into medical care or whether it's social service needs of some kind. So I think that's been a direct benefit on an individual level, but we're also able to analyze some of the data that they have, which we love data in public health, so we're all excited about that. But having access to that 911 data and knowing what we're going out on runs for, we can look at what those top reasons for runs are, and then we can develop a prevention strategy, whether it be education, whether it be bringing community partners together, working with other nonprofit groups that support that strategy. An example of that would be falls. So falls are the number one cause of the number one reason for calling 911. It's the number one reason that the medical runs happen with the fire team. So we know that this is something that frequently happens in our community. We also know that we have an aging demographic. Our community is just getting a little bit older, so we know that these things are going to continue to go up. So then we can start to talk about, okay, what are the preventative strategies we can put in place, from talking to Public Works about fixing trip hazards in our sidewalks to working with organizations such as the Shepherd Center to put in place supports directly into people's homes, from working with family members for support as a caregiver, because we have a lot of strained caregivers too in that situation who may have an aging loved one in their home that needs a little bit of extra care. So it's really kind of a whole community perspective on how we can support people a little bit better in our community.
And these three came together recently in some legislation that we got passed through the city council on a public safety nuisance ordinance. So there are places in Fishers, there are businesses in Fishers, there are facilities that drive an awful lot of 911 calls. And we know that they're a problem, we know that they're a challenge, and are we going to be proactive or reactive? And so we passed what is called a public safety nuisance ordinance that basically says, hey, in 90 days, if you have more than 15 911 calls to your facility, you need to come have a conversation with our public safety team to figure out how we reduce those calls. And we just enacted that this year, started it in August, but prior to that, we knew that there were a number of businesses that we knew were going to hit those numbers, and we started having discussions with these folks, and it's led us to all kinds of interesting conversations. In fact, one particular hotel that has had a lot of struggles with a lot of bad things happening in it, Gephardt and I actually ended up talking to the owner in a hotel room, sitting on the bed, having this discussion because they don't have an office, so it was a little awkward, but we got through it. But can any one of you guys talk about like some of the simple, just by opening up the door of communication and having a collective front, some of the aha moments we've already had with the discussions with these facilities and how it is helping reduce the load on 911 and your guys' response?
Yeah, one that happened upon us accidentally was last month. We had a gas leak. Where's Cecilia Coble? Councilwoman Cecilia Coble calls my cell phone and says, I'm at the beauty shop and there's an overwhelming smell of natural gas. What do? I said, call 911.
Don't turn the blow dryer on.
Don't call me, call 911. So we respond, and she was correct. And there was a restaurant adjacent to the beauty salon, and our people came in because the police department was tracking the public safety nuisance data. We figured out pretty quickly that this wasn't the first gas leak at this restaurant. And then our people doing their fire investigation, our Fire Prevention Bureau, realized that the gas leak was caused by an issue with the health and wellness in the restaurant. So the synergy between our three organizations not only eliminated any more gas leak calls, so you can get your hair done on time, but also the three of us working together, now that restaurant is up and running. They've got a great rating. They've got an A rating. We don't have to go on any more gas leaks. So that's just one example in the past month.
Yeah, being here in a business-driven environment, the thing that I've learned from it is I stand back in public safety and I'm like, hey, we're down here too much. The businesses themselves want to partner and want to have good businesses and want to attract good customers, and they have a lot of needs and wants from the city to help them to do that in the environments that they may be struggling in. And one business in particular, I mean, the hotel today has emailed me today to update me on their status, and we haven't even flipped the switch on yet. We're not even to a point where we're holding anybody accountable. The business owners themselves are in it and want to be good and want to be better because they're in this to make money and have good businesses. The other business, the bigger one that is working with us, we've been down there multiple times and seen dramatic changes and reduction in calls for service already before we even really began. And I wonder if we're even ever going to flip that switch, because I think if you let the businesses know, they're so proactive and they're just calling and getting a hold of us and updating us, and they want to be that business that's up front and doing it right. And that's what I've learned from it.
Now, Monica, everyone asks this, and you got to give us at least one story of food inspections. What's one of the wildest, and we're not naming restaurants here. It's not a FOIA request. What's one of the wildest things you guys have seen so far in the restaurant inspection world?
Well, one of the examples I can give, the facility is no longer in operation, so
Good.
I feel good about that.
Well, not that they're out of business, but
I feel okay about talking about it. But, we came up to do the inspection, and we saw that there was shrimp on the hood of a car being de-thawed. As you might guess, that's not really how we do things here. It's not part of the state standards.
it was hibachi.
Just a different kind. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So, so in cases like that, our goal, much like with the nuisance order, is really to work with the businesses. And we really consider this a partnership opportunity and an educational opportunity. You can approach regulatory efforts as a punitive exercise and just write tickets all day long, but that really doesn't solve the problem, and it doesn't make anybody safer, and it doesn't make anybody less likely to get sick from being exposed to shrimp that's de-thawed on a car hood. So we've really doubled down on our efforts to educate and to partner. And the restaurant grading scale is an example of that. It gives a little extra motivation for our facilities here in Fishers to make sure those standards are up to place, but we always consider this a partnership. We always do our inspections with a heavy educational component and work directly with the facilities to make sure they understand not only what they're supposed to be doing, but why they're supposed to be doing those things and how it protects the health and safety of the people that are trying to patronize that facility.
So I want to talk in a moment of seriousness here, Chief Gephardt and Arusa in particular, and Monica as well, but our men and women, they see a lot of very difficult things. It's an unusual profession to go witness the most traumatic moment in someone else's life and then go home to a birthday party and pretend that everything's okay. And their industries, police and fire in particular, were historically really bad at supporting the individuals that would go do that work. It was suck it up, do your job, and if you go home and drink yourself to death or have 14 divorces or whatever the issue might be, as long as you came to work, you were a good firefighter, you're a good police officer. And we've had to evolve and adapt, and we've seen our own men and women fall or succumb to PTSD, a number of them, and we've learned along the way on how to be better for them. And I want you guys to talk about kind of the struggles that we've had and what we've learned and how we're trying to help support men and women that do this job.
Well, the good thing is Steve's getting therapy for the dog bite, so it's working. It's dramatically affected. Look, doesn't matter where you're at, doesn't matter where you police or where you do firework or really for anything that matters. We all have our struggles. They're different from each other, and a critical incident for me is different from any of you in the audience. What's going to affect me is not going to affect the next person, and what might affect me, it just goes and goes. So we just don't know the touch points. So we had to put systems in place to go out and make sure that our people were healthy and safe. And the major hurdle here is trust. We are not in an environment where it is tough to come forward and say, I'm struggling mentally. We're not. And I think that the ground that we both have gained in this environment is that we've made it okay. I don't care if you have a knee injury or you have a head injury, and I mean a mental health injury. It doesn't matter to me. Just talk to me about getting better and when we're going to get you back. And we've had those affect us in both our departments. So what we've done is we've gone out and we've supported them with lots of resources. We've found partners that will help us with care that's in-house if we need to get someone out for an emergency, the Resilience or Chateau in Utah. We also brought in a therapist that the officers and the firemen and women can call on their own, and it's anonymous, and they can get the help that they need if they're going to intersect that trauma. And that's the medicine of struggle, is just talking about it, intersecting it. And so we needed to create an environment where it was okay not only for leaders to talk about it and identify it and bring it forward, but also it's okay for the officers to have a place to go and vent and come off of that call for service. And a lot of these can be intersected directly after a critical incident. And a lot of critical incidents happen because they're different for everybody involved. Anything to add, Steve?
One of the biggest things in the process is that we worked on with the mayor is that peer support. No one wants to go to chief's office and say, hey man, I don't feel right. So the peer support system is training people inside our organization, training our company officers and our supervisors to look for cues that something's not okay. And then approaching that person in a non-threatening environment, not in front of their peers, but in private, and saying, hey, what's up, how you doing? And then not only that, but noticing when things are wrong, whether they be at home or at work. And the other thing that we've done, and with your help, Victoria Garcia-Wilburn, our state representative, is we were able to put behavioral health education training in police and fire academies that's never been there before. Mandatory training. And not only that we have to sustain that training for our people, so thank you for that.
Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
One addition to that I want everybody to take from this, if we are hurting and know how to get help, and we get that help, we're going to respond to you in a better fashion, in a better sense of mind. That's important. But also, helping them to identify that you, the community, can be hurting is a tool of training as well. So when we get to the house, we understand what we're looking at. And as these calls for service continue to increase, and they do because mental health is very prevalent, it's good that the officers understand that not only can they get help, but we can find resources through the public health department, through Brittany, to go out and get people help within our community. And that just leads to a better city.
I want to tackle another challenge. After George Floyd, Chief Gephardt, you and I, and Chief Arusa, we stood out there as the young folks and residents expressed their frustration over the conflict between race and policing and their public institutions. And the three of us, along with other city leaders, spend a lot of time learning and listening when it comes to matters of diversity. And we have never been, our administration has never been one to thump our chest and to go make big statements that don't have a lot of meaning or substance behind them. We care about our actions. And I want to have you guys talk about what we've learned in that realm and the work that's being done on the front of being diverse and being understanding of Fishers, frankly, being a global community.
Yeah, change is hard, and inside our own organization, we realized that we had to make some changes and we had to make some positive improvements and progress. So we got aggressive. We networked with different organizations to try to increase our diversity within our Fire and Emergency Service Agency. It was a heavy lift because the change had never been discussed before, and it was about time that it happened. And when I say it was a heavy lift, it wasn't a heavy lift for my staff, for my training division, and I'm proud to say that through our efforts over the past couple of years, our fire department is at 15% diversity level. That exceeds the diversity of level in our city, and it was not a lot of hard work. And that diversity of individuals and that diversity of thought has translated into serving this community better and increasing our life-saving capability, so I'm grateful for that.
This has been a topic, and I appreciate that we talk post-Floyd, but I feel like our city was dealing with this pre-Floyd. We started to do things immediately to get ourselves in the right direction, at least then when Floyd did happen. We were ready to speak to some things that we were kind of turning the wrench on, that we didn't quite, the mayor and I in our first race conversation with the community member that was upset, we got done with it, and he looked at me, and I said, man, we should have just shut up. I mean, sometimes you got to be quiet and just listen to what your community wants and what they need and what they expect of you, and then you got to drive the car there somehow. Whether it's adding police officers to reflect that of our community, which we are, whether it's making sure leadership within your department reflects the cultures in the community that you serve, and we are, and it is never going to end. It's a constant learning lesson for all of us to continue to embrace. Fishers is so welcoming to so many different people. Recently, yesterday, we just swore in our first Muslim officer. We've sworn in a Sikh officer 2-3 years ago that's doing a fantastic job. So the strides are happening slowly, but we're still turning the wrench. We're still learning. We're still trying to figure out our way here. But I think that with an open community, which we have, and a lot of guidance from the community, we'll continue to get better and continue to increase those numbers and odds.
Monica, when we were preparing for this conversation today, we were talking about what we thought our challenges are moving forward as a community. And the one that kind of rose to the top as we were talking was social isolation. Can you talk a little bit about that as you guys do a health needs assessment and you're looking at some of the challenges? Why for a focus on health, why do you believe social isolation rises to the top?
Well, I think we've kind of heard this. All of us have heard this. It is, part of the national picture that we have right now. The Surgeon General recently put out a report specifically dealing with social isolation currently. I think it's a difficult question. It's a very broad and difficult question. I could speak for a long time about this. But we're all really busy. We're in a community where we're doing a lot of things and we're taking kids to a lot of places. And oftentimes the people that get left behind are ourselves. And we forget to connect with others. We forget to connect to our neighbors. We forget to be good neighbors. And remember that we're part of this community and this larger community. And, I think we see that in a lot of
Well, there was a great example
what's happening,
of
right?
that, Monica, recently. It was, I think, last year in an affluent neighborhood in Fishers. We got called to a home. Chief, correct me on the details of this if I'm wrong. Got called to a home that the neighbors were upset about the way the deck looked. It was in disrepair. And so the inspectors go to knock on the door, and a gentleman comes to the door who is literally starving to death and is in his own filth, elderly man, and had been there for a very long time and no family around. And the neighbors didn't know him, didn't know anything about him. They were just upset that his deck looked bad. So I think, to your point about social isolation, it can come in the individual components or it can come in the macro level because we identify as a particular political party, political ideology, and we write off each other. And so we forget that each and every one of us is a neighbor, part of a community, and that internal struggle weakens our overall collective community. So I do think that's a massive issue.
And we never know how those calls are coming in. I mean, we have some really good stories too, positive stories where we got to people a little bit earlier because a good neighbor called in and said, hey, I haven't seen this person's car move in a while. Like, can somebody go check on them? And we're really able to do something about that. But we have to know our neighbors first.
And I want to end on that today in the sense of you guys we're constantly obsessed with this conversation about how to make our community safe. Two questions to each of you. Start with Chief Gephardt. What's our biggest vulnerability? And then what's the call to action for the folks sitting out here today?
Well, I put something on everybody's table and I want to get to it.
Oh, yes, that is. Before you get to answer that question, everybody find there is a small.
And I put people in charge. This is it.
All right.
This is it. All right.
All right.
All right.
So before Chief tells you this story, it's not a door prize.
Not a door prize.
It's a get out of jail free card for anybody that grabs that.
Good luck with
What is important and what Chief Gephardt's going to show you, and it's true about every one of these departments, that when we give them the resources and we have good leadership in place and we turn them loose, it is incredible the competency and the compassion and the innovation that comes from our public servants. And Chief's going to tell you a little bit about the story.
So I'm going to tie this into question one because I do believe it's important, and we'll tie it into what you have in front of you there. And people I put in charge of it, you do get to pass it around, so don't try to hold and take off out of here. I'm worried about violence of crime coming into our jurisdiction from other jurisdictions. That is my focus. And I can't take responsibility for what I'm about to tell you. This is just great people doing great things while you're moving the ball forward. And so one of the things that we're after is we have a good gun program, and we have a good DNA program, and we have a great flock program, and we're doing these things through our city to track and hunt down criminals that come up here and try to make us unsafe. There's one addition that we want to that, and what this is the ability to take DNA and fingerprints off of spent shell casings. No one in the state of Indiana can do it. I think only 2 other states can currently do it. You have to take hundreds of pictures all the way around the spent shell casing. You have to lay that flat to build the ridges and build the print so you can grab a fingerprint and identify a suspect behind that shell casing that has loaded it into that magazine, or DNA can be vacuumed off it because of technology, and we can get a positive ID on a shooter or a criminal that's going to come up here. And look, part of this is we are so fancy up here, just don't come up here. Just don't play up here. We don't want that. There was one problem. A bunch of officers out on the street. You have 124 officers out there prowling and growling. They move fast, call to call, service to service. There's 52,000 calls for service last year. So they needed something to be able to pick this up to not do what? Touch it or mess with it, which they're doing really well with it because we already learned from our gun program that there's a lot of evidence on these items. So this was created because of innovation in the city by our officers that work in our lab. And what this is it's a capsule made in a 3D printer right at the Fishers Police Department. You can twist off the black cap, you can pull it open, and you'll see a shell casing in there, right? That's a 9mm shell casing used in a homicide, and now you're my suspect. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. Calm down. Someone's leaving. This enables us. The springs were bought off Amazon. It was built in-house by one of our forensic investigators, Matt Noyes, and it was led by people much closer to the ground and to the fight. And these are the things that are going on day in and day out to keep you safe. I'm going to ask for some help. You can pass it around and check it out, but because we want to be a good steward of the tax money, we want these back. So there's a white box out where the name tags are. I put some of you in charge. I remember who you are. Make sure they get back out to the box so we can go lock criminals up. And that's one to my greatest worry. The call to action that he asked for is this, and mine is a little bit in conjunction to Monica's ask. Mine's simple. Eat dinner with your kids. Take time out, take a moment out to sit down at a table and figure out what's going on in school, what's happening in their day. A lot of violence can be solved in our schools, in our communities, with the knowledge that those little awesome people have. And while you're doing it, invite somebody in and gain knowledge of your neighbors and so forth. And that call to action comes, I'm a little bit more down the road here. But I know we're busy and we play sports and we do things and I have kids and all that. Just take a day or two, put it aside and eat dinner and ask them what they're learning, what they're seeing. A lot of things can be solved if you do that. And by the way, I started doing it and became just a little bit better of a parent. So that's my call to action for you.
Chief?
One shout out. Last week we got our fire protection classification from the Insurance Services Organization. Fishers was scored at a 2. That means that we were ranked in the top 2% of the fire departments in the country. So big shout out, round of applause for my staff and your firefighters and the Fire Prevention Bureau. Great job. Thank you. I think the face of the first responder is going to change not only in Fishers but across the country. Besides being a firefighter, a paramedic, a diver, a police officer, there'll be a public health specialist, there'll be a behavioral health specialist, there'll be a community risk reduction specialist, there'll be a passionate navigator to provide services through places like the Shepherd Center. Those are changing, but I want to quote my boss and Mayor Fadness when he says we always have to work upstream. And my ask is that I think you can help us. I think that any time that we become so defensive about our ideology that we forget about respect communication, empathy, acceptance for others, and understanding, we forget about community. And we forget about checking on each other. And to work upstream, we're going to need you to be part of our community, check on your neighbors, talk to each other. Let's get that back. And that's my ask to help us.
Monica?
Yeah, I would echo all of that. A little bit more specifically, and a little bit of a plug for one of our efforts would be just areas of vulnerability. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of each other, but we also need to take care of ourselves. We do have a tool for that, so anyone is welcome to visit Sigma Free Fishers, our website. Jack's wearing a pin on his lapel, I see, which is awesome. If you want to partner with us as a business or an organization or want us to come talk to your staff, we're happy to do that. But that is a mental health toolkit for you, for anyone you might be working with that could benefit from that, evidence-based resources for mental health. It has assessments. You can find out where you're at on a number of different scales. It's very informative, and it can give you lots of tools to help you, again, take care of yourself or take care of a loved one who might be struggling with something. We also have a resource list there, so if you know of a neighbor or someone that you are in contact with, somebody that you work with that could use the help of other resources as well, we have that linked into our Sigma Free Fishers website, so please do visit that. And the idea is to get this into the hands of as many people as possible so that we can all help our neighbors, check on our neighbors, be good neighbors, and build that community in the way that we know that we have done and that we can continue to do.
In closing, thank you. I know we went a little over time, but all of these folks are so passionate and so competent at their work that I wanted you to hear their stories. And their stories are the collective stories of our entire team. Many are here today, department heads and all of their employees that they represent. And as we talk about being good stewards of our community, please, please, please vote in support of the referendum. Our schools are a huge, huge component of our community. So we're going to be doing all that we can to support our school system, and we're going to do everything we can to get that referendum passed. Know that these folks day and night are worried about you and your family and making sure that you're safe. There are bright, bright days ahead for the City of Fishers. Thank you for your time today, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
This isn't working. Real quick, hold on 1 second. Before you all head out, we still got 4 minutes. Hold on 1 second. Real quick, I want to thank all of you for being here today. I do want to give a shout out. So, real quick, we have our honors. So the honors celebrates long-standing members of our organization. Throughout 2023, we're going to be acknowledging all of our partners, and I would like to give a shout out to CNO Financial Group. If they're here, you can raise your hand. CNO Financial Group is, we're happy to have them join us. They've been a member since 1980. So with that, if they are here, if you could come to the back, that'd be great. And finally with that, now that everybody's heading out, thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day.